Nobody was ready for this. Not the fans, not the family, and definitely not the people who thought the Braxton story had already been told. Because when Tamar Braxton finally spoke this time, she didn't come with shade, jokes, or reality TV theatrics. She came with something heavier, something that felt like a confession mixed with an accusation. And the moment the words left her mouth, the entire Braxton legacy started shaking. For years, the story was simple. Evelyn Braxton was the strong matriarch, the glue, the woman who held her children together through poverty, pain, and public scrutiny. Traci was the underdog. Michael stayed in the background. Tamar was the loud one. That's the version we were all given. But now Tamar is saying that version was never complete. She's claiming that behind closed doors, choices were made. Painful choices. That in order to protect the family image, protect the brand, protect certain futures, others were quietly pushed aside. And once you hear the names she says were sacrificed, everything you thought you knew starts to unravel. Because she's not talking about outsiders. She's talking about blood. She's talking about Traci, and she's talking about Michael. The internet is already spiraling. Old interviews are being dissected. Old scenes suddenly feel different. Fans are asking questions that were never asked out loud before. And the most chilling part? Tamar says this all started long before fame, long before cameras, long before anyone was watching. And if even half of what she's hinting at is true, then this isn't just family drama. This is a reckoning that's been decades in the making. And once you hear what Tamar says happened inside that house, there's no going back. It started with a voice that sounded tired, not angry. That's what caught people off guard. Tamar wasn't yelling. She wasn't cracking jokes. She wasn't doing what everyone expects her to do when the cameras are on. She sounded heavy, like someone who had been carrying a truth for too long and finally ran out of places to put it. According to people who were in the room when it first came out, the atmosphere changed instantly. Phones went down. Smiles disappeared. Tamar allegedly looked straight at her mother and said, "You didn't protect everybody." Not loudly, not dramatically, just calmly enough to make it hurt more. That's when everything cracked. Insiders say Tamar began talking about the early days, long before contracts and TV deals, when the family was still stacked in that house, struggling but dreaming. She said the narrative everyone knows, that all the kids suffered equally and rose together, was never true. Some were chosen to move forward. Others were told to wait. And waiting turned into being left behind. Traci's name came up first. Tamar reportedly said what many fans have quietly suspected for years, but were scared to say out loud. That Traci's life was rerouted without her consent. That when Traci got pregnant young, it wasn't just concern or disappointment, it became justification. Tamar claimed her mother decided Traci could no longer be the face of the family's future. Music opportunities stopped. Group plans changed. Conversations happened without Traci in the room. One alleged leaked text from a former family associate read. They said it was about protecting the image. Traci cried for days. Real or not, that message spread like wildfire because it lined up too well with what viewers had seen over the years. Traci's pain, her jokes masking hurt, her constant feeling of being on the outside looking in. Tamar reportedly said something that stunned everyone listening. She didn't just lose her spot, she lost her voice. And that sentence alone sent fans back to old interviews where Traci talked about feeling unseen, unheard, and constantly trying to prove she belonged. Then Tamar shifted. She brought up her brother Michael. This is where the room allegedly went silent. Tamar claimed Michael wasn't pushed aside loudly like Traci. He was erased quietly. She said he was expected to be strong, invisible, and grateful for whatever scraps of inclusion he received. While the sisters were being molded into stars, Michael was being molded into silence. According to Tamar, his feelings were treated as inconveniences. His pain was minimized. His role in the family story was reduced to support. One insider claims Tamar said, he learned early that his emotions didn't fit the plan. And once that lesson is learned, it sticks. Fans immediately began pulling clips of Michael over the years. His nervous laughter, his self-deprecating jokes, his comments about being forgotten. Suddenly, those moments didn't feel lighthearted anymore. They felt like survival. Tamar allegedly accused Evelyn of believing sacrifice was necessary. That in her mind, losing one dream was worth saving the whole family. But Tamar questioned who gets to decide who's sacrificed, who carries that cost, and who lives with it long after the cameras stop rolling. The confrontation didn't end there. Sources say Evelyn pushed back, saying she did what she had to do as a mother, that she was trying to protect all her children. Tamar responded with something that left the room shaken. Protecting some by hurting others is still hurting. No one spoke after that. Within hours, word started leaking. Group chats exploded. Producers panicked. Family friends started choosing sides quietly. One person close to the situation said, "This isn't a fight. This is decades of truth colliding at once." Social media felt it immediately. Clips of Traci singing alone resurfaced. Fans shared old quotes where she said she felt like the extra sister. People noticed how often Michael was missing from family milestones. Hashtags formed asking why Traci always seemed to be apologizing for existing. And Tamar, she didn't backtrack. She posted a single line that night. "Truth doesn't destroy families, silence does." That's where things stopped, for now. Because the biggest question wasn't answered yet. If Traci and Michael were sacrificed, who benefited? And was this pattern repeated in ways we haven't even uncovered yet? That question is hanging in the air, unanswered, heavy, and impossible to ignore. The next day, the silence felt louder than the argument itself. No statements, no clarifications, no carefully worded family post trying to smooth things over. And that's when people knew this wasn't just another Braxton disagreement that would be patched up for the cameras. This was something deeper, something that had been sitting in the family's chest for decades and finally started breathing on its own. According to multiple so-called insiders, the fallout didn't stay in that room. It spread fast. Phone calls went unanswered. Group chats went quiet. One source claimed Evelyn locked herself away for hours after the confrontation, refusing to speak to anyone except one daughter. And that daughter was Tamar. That detail alone set social media on fire. Fans started asking the same uncomfortable question over and over again. Why does it always feel like Tamar is on the outside when she's the one saying the hard things out loud? Tamar, meanwhile, didn't disappear. She went quiet, yes, but not invisible. And that quiet made people nervous. Because when Tamar stops reacting emotionally, it usually means she's thinking, processing, connecting dots that everyone else has tried to keep separate. Behind the scenes, alleged voice notes began circulating. Nothing officially confirmed, but close enough to feel real. In one message attributed to a longtime family friend, a woman's voice says, "Evelyn believed discipline was love. Control was protection. She didn't think she was hurting them. She thought she was saving them." That clip alone split the internet in half. Some people nodded in understanding. Others heard it as justification for emotional damage. Then came the Traci revelations. People close to production claim that after Traci's passing, there were conversations about rewriting certain family narratives for future projects, making things softer, cleaner, less complicated. Tamar allegedly refused. She didn't want Traci remembered as the funny sister or the late bloomer. She wanted her remembered as the one who was sidelined and still showed up anyway. One insider said Tamar told a producer, "Y'all don't get to make her pain inspirational now. It was preventable." That line alone made its way onto Twitter and exploded. Fans replayed old seasons with fresh eyes, noticing how often Traci laughed things off, how quickly she backed down in arguments, how often she apologized for being emotional. Suddenly, moments that once felt like personality traits started looking like coping mechanisms. Michael's name came back into the conversation too, and this time, it hit harder. Tamar allegedly said Michael learned early that being agreeable was safer than being honest. That whenever he tried to speak up, the room would tense. Not because he was wrong, but because his truth complicated the family image. A supposed leaked email from years ago resurfaced, claiming Michael once asked to be more involved in a family project and was told, "This lane isn't for you." No explanation, no discussion, just a closed door. Real or not, fans believed it because it matched the pattern they were now seeing clearly. What shook people most was Tamar's alleged realization that these weren't isolated moments. They were decisions, repeated ones, choices made under the banner of what's best for the family, but always costing the same people. Evelyn's defenders came out quickly. Some said she was a product of her time, that she raised 6 kids with limited resources and overwhelming pressure, that she did the best she could. Tamar didn't deny any of that. According to someone close to her, she said, "You can do your best and still do damage." That sentence hit especially hard for older viewers, mothers, grandmothers, women who recognized themselves in Evelyn's choices and their children in Tamar's pain. Then came the moment that allegedly broke everything open. During a tense, private family meeting, no cameras, no producers, Tamar is said to have asked one question that no one answered right away. If Traci hadn't gotten pregnant, would her life have looked different? No one spoke. Not denial, not agreement, just silence. That silence told its own story. People in the room reportedly looked at the floor. Someone started crying quietly. Another person left the room entirely. And Evelyn, according to the same source, didn't respond. She simply said, "I did what I thought was right," and ended the conversation. For Tamar, that was the confirmation she didn't know she was waiting for. Online, the narrative kept growing. Fans compared the Braxton family dynamic to other famous families where one child carried the dream and others carried the cost. People shared personal stories about siblings who were labeled the problem just for needing something different, about brothers who disappeared emotionally because there was no space for them. Tamar finally broke her silence again, posting a message that felt less like an accusation and more like a boundary. "I can love my mother and still name the hurt. Both can be true." That line divided the audience clean down the middle. Some praised her courage, others accused her of reopening wounds that should stay closed. But what no one could deny was this: the story had shifted. Tamar wasn't just the loud sister anymore. She was the one holding a mirror the family had avoided for decades. And just when people thought the worst had already come out, another alleged detail surfaced. Something involving a choice made years ago that permanently altered Traci's path in a way Tamar says she didn't fully understand until recently. That revelation hadn't been spoken publicly yet, but everyone could feel it coming. By the time the whispers reached the wider public, it was already too late to contain them. What Tamar had uncovered wasn't just emotional history, it was a paper trail. Not official court documents, not something you could easily Google, but memories, conversations, decisions that were quietly agreed upon and never revisited out loud. According to someone who claims they were present during one of the earliest family meetings, there was a moment years ago when Traci wanted back in, not as comic relief, not as the extra sister. She wanted a real seat, a real push, and the response she allegedly received still haunts Tamar to this day. "She's not ready," Evelyn supposedly said, "and if we push her too hard, it could hurt everything we've built." That word, everything, keeps coming up in these stories. Everything meant the group, the image, the momentum, the dream that had finally started paying off. Traci, according to insiders, heard that message loud and clear even if it wasn't said directly to her face. She smiled anyway, showed up anyway, supported anyway, and slowly learned that love in that house often came with conditions. Michael's situation was different, but no less painful. Tamar claims he became the example of what happens when you don't fight hard enough to be seen. He stayed close, but not centered, present, but peripheral, and over time, that position became permanent. One alleged leaked text exchange between Tamar and a close confidant paints the picture clearly. "They didn't throw him away," Tamar wrote. "They just stopped reaching for him." That line shattered people, because it suggested something more complex than cruelty. It suggested quiet exclusion, the kind that's harder to confront because no one ever admits it's happening. As the story grew, other voices entered the conversation. Former collaborators, old friends of the family. Even one retired producer who claimed the Braxtons were warned years ago that unresolved resentment would eventually surface. "You can't keep filming over cracks," he allegedly said. "Eventually, the ground gives way." And now it had. Social media turned into a courtroom. Some defended Evelyn fiercely, calling her a survivor who did what she had to do in an unforgiving industry. Others said survival shouldn't come at the cost of your children's wholeness. Hashtags popped up. Old clips went viral. Fans replayed scenes where Traci was interrupted, talked over, or minimized. Moments that once felt harmless now felt heavy. Tamar didn't fuel the fire. That was the most unsettling part. She didn't go live. She didn't clap back. She didn't explain herself further. She let the silence do the work. Behind closed doors, though, sources say the family was unraveling. One sister allegedly confronted Evelyn directly, asking if Tamar was telling the truth. The answer she got wasn't denial. It was exhaustion. "I can't do this again," Evelyn reportedly said. "I already paid the price." That statement confused everyone. Paid what price? Lost what? Regretted what? No one pressed further, and that lack of follow-up only deepened the unease. Then came the moment that changed everything. A private audio clip began circulating among a very small circle. It hasn't been released publicly. No one confirmed its authenticity, but multiple people claim to have heard it. In it, Tamar is said to break down in tears, saying, "I didn't know how much she gave up until she was gone, and I don't know how to forgive that." Not blame, not anger, grief. That's when the narrative shifted again. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't exposure for clicks. It was mourning that had been postponed for too long. Traci's name trended for reasons that had nothing to do with jokes or throwback clips. People talked about her strength, her patience, her quiet loyalty, and many asked the question Tamar herself is reportedly still struggling with. What would her life have looked like if the family had chosen differently? As for Michael, he's remained silent, and somehow that silence speaks the loudest of all. A family friend says Tamar reached out to him privately after everything surfaced. No cameras, no audience, just siblings talking for the first time without roles assigned. What was said hasn't been shared. But afterward, Tamar reportedly told someone close to her, "He doesn't need an apology, he needs peace." The Braxton legacy now feels fragile in a way it never has before. Not because of scandals or ratings or public feuds, but because the foundation itself is being questioned. And the hardest truth of all, Tamar isn't done talking. There's one more story she hasn't told yet. One memory she says explains everything. One moment that ties Traci and Michael together in a way no one ever noticed. She hasn't shared it because, in her words, "Once I say this, we can't pretend anymore." And that's the part that has everyone holding their breath. Because when pretending ends, something always breaks. And this is exactly where the story gets dangerous to ignore. Because what you just heard isn't just celebrity gossip. It's a family legacy cracking open in real time. It's decades of silence finally breaking. It's questions that were never meant to be asked now sitting right in front of all of us, unanswered and burning. If Tamar really tells that last story she's been holding back, if that final memory comes out the way insiders say it will, the entire Braxton narrative changes forever. There's no undo button after that. No edits. No rewrites. No pretending it was all just reality TV drama. This isn't about picking sides anymore. This is about truth, accountability, and the emotional cost of survival inside a famous family. And the scariest part, the people closest to the situation are saying the next reveal won't be emotional, it'll be undeniable. So if you felt your chest tighten during this story, if certain moments made you uncomfortable, if you caught yourself replaying scenes from the past and seeing them differently now, that's not an accident. That's the truth pressing its way out. Do not miss what comes next. Hit that like button so this story keeps circulating. Subscribe right now because the next chapter is already unfolding behind the scenes. And drop a comment, not just with opinions, but with your instincts. Who do you believe? What feels off? And what do you think Tamar is still protecting by staying quiet for now? Because once that last secret drops, there's no going back. And you're going to want to say you were here before it happened.